Hey everybody, my name is the Brandt, and I want to show you this game, Three Kingdoms Redux. This is a new edition brought to you by Captsone Games. It was originally published by Starting Player, and Capstone is releasing it in 2017. So I wanted to show you this game. So this is a game about three factions in China fighting in the early ADs. They are fighting out for power and control. What's totally unique about this game is it is a three-player only game, and it's a pretty heavy game, so you're talking in the 2 to 3 hour range to play the game. So that's obviously already going to make it a tough game to get to the table and whatnot. But let's take a closer look at how you play this game and what happens when you play a game of Three Kingdoms Redux. Okay, so this is the board for a game of Three Kingdoms Redux. What you have here is you have a spot for the Wei player, the Wu player, and the Shu player. So I've got some pieces out here so you can see what's happening. So at the start of the game, the Wei player has these 5 developments of rice fields and these 5 developments of marketplaces, which they don't have in play yet. So what players are going to do is they're going to start the game by drafting various generals. So every faction starts with one general they have in play, and then you're going to take 6 of these cards, and based on which faction you are, you're going to get to keep a certain number of these other generals. And as you can see, each general has a unique ability and a unique type of army that they like to combat, as well as their skills up here. And then they have a token that goes with them that you'll have to find that matches with that one. This is not Li Jin, but he's somewhere else in the pile there. So players will start by doing that. And then the very first action of the turn is the 2 players who are in second and third place, marked up here, second and third, so Wu and Shu, are going to decide where to place the alliance token. So they're going to put this alliance token somewhere on one of these 10 outer common bidding spaces. So Three Kingdoms Redux is essentially a worker placement game, although that worker placement is an auction. It's a bid for each space. So they're going to pick a spot. Typically, I find they put it here on this space, the recruit new army space, on the first turn. So they get to decide between the 2 of them where they want to place that, although ultimately it's the last player, in this case the Shu's decision as to where that token's going to be placed. I'll get to that in 1 second. So then, what players do next is, starting with the first player, in this case Wei, they're going to take their general and they're going to bid for one of these action spaces. So you just bid by putting your token in that space and you've made a bid. So this is where these skills will come into place. So each general has an administration value, a military value, and a leadership value. And so what you do is when you bid in a space, you look at the type of space it's in. So this is a military space. So Cao here for the Wei player is bidding 3. That would be a bid of 3. If later Shu bid there and bid with this general, they would bid 4. And so they would win that space. In case of ties, it goes to the player that got to that number first. So if Shu came in and bid 3 on this space instead, then that would still go to Cao, and Wei would win that space. So everybody goes around bidding on the various spaces, and then you just figure out once everybody's used all their generals. So one of the key things here is Wei is going to start with 5 generals, Wu is going to start with 4, and Shu is going to start with 3. So there's a difference in the setup there, some asymmetry, as well as these generals that have all different powers on them. So once you do that, you go through and you look to see how many auctions everybody won for the various spaces, and then you update your bidding track here. So next round, the bidding is going to change based on who is in first, who is in second, who is in third. Any ties are broken by military points, which are scored right here. As well as after that, then the previous bidding order is going to remain if there's a tie. So after players do that, then they're going to go through and they're going to resolve all these actions. Now, actions are supposed to be done in the action track order, although we found most of the time once you know the game, you can just resolve simultaneously, and if somebody's last, they can just say, oh, well, I want to know what you're doing before, you do that and whatnot. So resolving all these spaces. Before I go resolving all the spaces, I should tell you how you're going to score points in this game. So first thing you can see is there's various tracks. On each of those tracks, there's this symbol. This is victory points. These are victory points at the end of the game as well, although these are points you'll score during the game, too, for military victories. Each player also has their tribal relations track in front of them with some points on it, and there's these little battlefield tokens that you can win and possibly get a victory point. In addition, at the end of the game, there's going to be a comparison. I'm not going to go through all these, but I'm just going to show you the various different things. So you're going to compare. You're going to say, were you individual first? Were you joint first? Individual second? Joint second? Individual third? Etc. Players will go through those in 4 different categories to see whether they won or not. And then there's a few other victory point things, including this Han Emperor token, which scores 2 points at the end of the game. So that's what players are trying to score during the game. That'll help make sense of some of these spaces. So I'm going to go through. When you resolve action spaces, it's important to note that you don't have to resolve them in any order, so you can decide the order. So that'll matter right here on this space. Oh, actually, I should talk about this space. This one right here, so if Wu and Shu are aligned here, that means they both can bid here, and their bids are totaled for the round against the Wei player. So the Wei player can still bid there, but the other 2 players are going to total theirs up, and they can both win this space. So that's one of the neat parts of this game being a 3-player only game, is this action right here. So players can use this either to block the 3rd player from getting a space or to ensure that it happens for them. That's kind of their option they can use there. All right, so let's go through and resolve all these spaces. So a little bit easier to start here. So this space, if you go here, you're going to recruit 2 untrained armies. So all armies come to you untrained. So they have this side here, which is the untrained side. They kind of have like farmer equipment. And then if you bring them here, you can train those armies, in which case you get to flip them over, and now they've got their military shield and helmet and sword and whatnot. So those are trained armies. Basically, you need trained armies to do anything, so untrained armies are just that. They're untrained. In addition, on this space, you can get 2 gold, 2 rice, 1 of each, or you can get an untrained army on this space. And these resources will be used for various things, mostly paying for your stationed armies as they go into battle. There's a, feed your workers element to the game. So that's what you're going to be using resources. But you trade them in for a lot of other things. Rice and gold are your main 2 resources. Here, these look like resources. These are actually weapons. So you can either get crossbows and vessels. Vessels are ships. Or down here, you can get spears and horses. And so what you'd need these for is that if you have a trained army, you can match it up with a weapon, and now you have an army that you can send into battle. So you can use trained armies for a few things, but most of the time you need a trained army with a weapon to send them into battle. And so you can get the various weapon types, horses and vessels. Horses would be here, vessels would be up here, etc. So that's how you acquire those. All right, keep moving over to here. These 2 spaces are exactly the same. They're definitely the most confusing part of the game, I found in teaching. So this space up here allows you to take the marketplace action. So if you develop a marketplace, you come down to your market and you get to flip one of your tokens over. That's what you do. So now you have a marketplace. This is going to be one of those endgame scoring conditions, whoever has the most developed, as well as triggering an endgame condition. The 4 endgame conditions, yes, are the game will go 12 rounds, and on rounds 3, 5, and 9, players will recruit new generals from their deck. They can recruit new generals, which is going to be key. There's this Emperor track, and if somebody becomes crowned Emperor, it'll end at the end of that round. There's these developments that I was just showing you. That's an endgame condition. And also, there are battles, and if a player has 5 generals stationed in battle, which I will get to in a little bit, then that will end the game too. All right, so this action allows you to flip. This action allows you to flip a farm over here. In addition, you can collect tax or you can harvest. So what happens here is you have an option. You can take any of your face-up ones. You don't get to flip. You get to take any of your face-up tokens, and you can move them up here. So this would be my granary. This would be my treasury. So the exact same action with 2 different resources. If I move it up here, it will now benefit me in that it'll pay for my armies at the end of the battle, or at the end of the round. If I don't, then I discard any of these, and I just get either 5 rice or 4 gold for them. So this would be discarded. That doesn't change my development level for endgame, but it just uses up that. So that's how those spaces work, getting you more resources. Here's a big trading space. You can trade resources in various ratios there. Here I can construct a state enhancement. So each player, again, this is a little asymmetrical, starts with different numbers of these cards, and there are separation cards and there are unification cards. And these cards do various things. Generally, they have a condition that needs to be met, have not stationed infantry units. You have to trade in some resources. This one has to trade infantry. You'll get a point at the end of the game, and then you'll get an ability going through the game. Typically, the separation cards give you victory points at the end of the game, and the unification cards give you resources throughout the game. So that's how those work. And you can get those cards by going here. This space allows you to pay 1 rice, and then you can train 2 of your untrained units. In addition, you can draw another card from the deck of cards. One house rule that most people suggest playing is instead of just drawing a card, you draw 2 of the type you'd like, pick one, and put the other on the bottom of the deck. That just removes some of the randomness of drawing the cards, because there are cards that you will not be able to play, and it stinks to draw a card that you then can't play. The last 2 spaces are right here. So these ones, notice the alliance token can't go here. In addition, they've changed. So each round you're going to flip these to change what is the way that you bid on them. So this one you're allowed to get a popular support token. So popular support tokens are these. So if you win this space, you'll get one of these popular support tokens. You can use that to bid in later rounds, and this will increase your bid by +1 for whatever you bid for. And then it'll go away at the end of the round. So that's how those work. And over here, last one is the Control the Han Emperor. So if you do this, you basically will pay 1 gold. You'll move up on the Han Emperor track, or I guess this would be Wei, which would score you another point. But then your general that you use to bid will have to stay there. So you flip them face down and you don't get them for the next round. Basically, they're being crowned or representing you, or whatever, however you want to think about that. Lastly, you get the Han Emperor token, and this is just like a popular support token. You can use it next round to add +1 to a bid anywhere. In addition to the common spaces, every player has a improved tribal relations space that's unique to them that they can bid in. So basically what's going to happen is if you bid here, you can move up on your tribal relations track. This is another one of those end game scoring, as well as there's some scoring and resources you can gain throughout the game. So if you go here, you can add gold or trained armies to your bid, and you can add that up to your leadership value. So all generals have a 1 or 2 leadership value. So that's how many pieces you can add here. The gold, if you use it, it'll be spent and it'll go away. The trained troops will actually come back to you. So if you're not fighting a battle that round, you're able to use them. Also, you don't need them to have a unit with them to be able to do that. Excuse me, a weapon. For every item you add here, you get to move up 1 on this track. If you just bid there, you won't move up, but you also won't move down. In the later phases, you have to move down if you didn't bid here. If you didn't try to improve your tribal relations, then it'll move down. So that's how that space works. Lastly, players have these battlefield spaces over here. So if I bid here, this is where I have to use my units. So I used a trained army as well as a weapon type, and I matched them up. Oops, sorry, not showing you that. General, I used a trained army and a weapon type, and I can bid up to my leadership. So I can add 2 of those if I would like. They have to be of the same type, but no general needs a specific one. They can bid with any types. So if I bid here, my bid is going to be my general's value plus however many troops. So this would be a bid of 6. And I can bid other generals. I can bring them with different troops if I want to. Let me show you one that has a 1. I can bring them with different troops if I want to, although this one can only bring 1. Or I could just bid them to add to that value. If I win here, what I'm allowed to do then is I can station in one of these border locations. So if I do this and I win with vessels, I'm allowed to station in either one of these 2 that have the vessel token. So I can station here, and then I get this token, which I get to place either in my my granary or my treasury. If I do that, it'll decrease my upkeep at the end of the round, and I'm going to score points for these units being stationed here. Once they're placed here, I never get this general back, so that's key, and nobody else can take that space. Any generals I didn't use, I get to take back, and I can only place 1 general no matter how many I bid there, so you're only going to gain 1 box per round. By the way, in this box, this is Wei and Wu. This is Wei and Shu, so you have different people you're battling, and then Shu and Wu have theirs up here that they can work with as well. So there's that space. So that's how I would win a battle if I do that. Oh, sorry. In addition, I would look at my general. I'm just going to pretend this is Cao Cao because I can't find that token. So Cao Cao, if Cao Cao had the vessel type and was stationed here, then I would get this border location token with a 1 VP, and I would score 1 victory point at the end of the game. So that is all the action spaces. After players take all their actions, then we're going to decrease tribal relations. So players that didn't bid in the tribal relations space will move their tribal relations down. And then at the end, you'll get any actions or benefits from generals. A lot of generals will say, like, at the end of the round, you recruited them, gain a bonus. Last, we go into the update and maintenance phase. So in this one, you flip those markers that mark the 2 middle spaces. So you'll flip one back to administration and this one over to battle. Then you will pass the Han Emperor token. Then you have to pay. So if you have 2 popular support tokens, you have to pay a rice for every 2 of those. If you only have 1, you don't have to pay. But for every 2, you have to pay for those if you're going to hold on to them. So using them's better. And then this is your big payment right here. 1 gold and 1 rice for each stationed army, and 1 less for every piece you have in your granary or in your treasury. So you really want to have those units. So right now, I would have to pay 2 because I have 2 units. Notice I'm not counting generals, just units that I have stationed. But I would decrease by 1. So I owe 1 rice and 2 gold for doing that. So as the game goes on, you're going to have more and more of those stationed, but you're going to have to pay more and more. But then you gain a victory point on the military track for each stationed army. So that would go up to 2. And then lastly, you move it to round 2, and you go on to the next phase. Of course, now you'll have different players that are in second and third, perhaps. And so you'll have to update, go back to placing the alliance token, and keep playing till one of those end game trigger actions happens, which is the end of the 12th round. This track, one player has 10 of their developments upgraded, or one player has 5 armies stationed in 5 generals stationed in battle on either side. Then the game will be over, and you will do scores. One thing to note, which is interesting, is in the last round when that is triggered, you do not do this update and maintenance phase, which means you won't have to pay for units that are stationed, and you won't score points for them. So that's really important. After that, players will total up. We always just use this track up here and add to it because you get these points plus whatever else you have on the board. Players will total up where they are in each category, any bonus points they have on spaces where their marker might be. I guess I should bring it down here. So I'd get 4 victory points here, as well as a few other categories, the Han Emperor token and these deficit tokens, a lot like the begging tokens in Agricola. If you can't pay for something, you get a -3, which is a huge negative, and your cards that you have in play in front of you. They may score points here or from their text. End of that, players total up and see where they are. That's the end of the game. Player with the most points wins. Okay, so that's how you play Three Kingdoms Redux. Let me show you some of the things that are different in the Capstone version. So first off, one thing I really like is these player aids. So they're thicker now than they were in the original version. Also, it's in publication, which is nice with the new Capstone version because the old version, I think, is pretty hard to get at this point. But these player aids are really nice. They give you everything for your unique faction. So they show all the setup, what you're going to do, what you draw in each round, and then just turn order and how points are scored. So these are really great to have. And on the back side, they have all the abilities of all the other 2 powers generals. So you have those as a quick reference. Your first play, this isn't very useful to you because you're just getting used to playing. But I could see this in the long run being a lot better. In addition, they did a good job. They made a compendium. These are awesome. Pay attention to these publishers. This is what we want, okay? So this compendium lists all the cards for each faction as well as all of the state enhancement cards and just gives you a quick rundown, kind of like an FAQ on all those cards. This is really useful. This is really nice. Sometimes it's still a little bit confusing because they just reword what was on the card and add maybe one thing where you were looking for something different, but still really awesome to have. So that's great. All right. First off, the board is beautiful. It looks a little stale from a distance, but when you get in close, the artwork is great and all those things. The art on the cards is really nice, so I really like that. Really good, and the card quality is really good. Linen finish on the cards, so that's really good. One thing that's a little bit annoying component-wise are these tokens. Are nice, but on the back side, there's nothing to set them apart. And there really isn't a great reason for that. You are supposed to play where when you recruit new generals, they're secret, and then you flip them over to everybody, so that's what they're going for. It's a little bit of a pain to find these, but it wasn't a huge detractor. I mean, in a longer game, you've got time in between rounds, so it's not a big deal being able to find those. Everything else is nice. It's thick cardboard, really easy to play and work with. So playing a game of Three Kingdoms Redux is really fun. It's really unique to have that 3-player only idea going on. And so there's not a lot of games, obviously, that play that way because it's a tricky thing to do. And so this is really fun. It just tackles that. It takes it on full hand. The fact that you can only attack that you attack separately, the people on each side of you, is really neat. One thing I didn't do in the overview is another rule is if you attack the person to your left and station a general there, you now have to attack the person to your right and station a general there before you're able to go back and attack the other player. Once you station one on each side, that's it. You can't. The doors are open. You can do whatever you want at that point. But that's kind of a neat balancing mechanism, as well as that alliance token, which is super fun to place at. It's a really simple mechanism, but it works really great to create that 3-player tension. So this game is really fun. It's exciting to be able to bid on all those different locations and place different tokens everywhere, and trying to work out, okay, what's that person going to do and what generals do they have in front of them? What do I have to think about? So you can kind of play 2 different games here. You can play the attack and spend your resources and try to score points, or you can almost play like a Euro-style game where you're building up your developments, letting the other 2 people kind of attack each other and work with that. If you're not a big fan of conflict, the game is neat because if somebody attacks you, you don't really lose anything. When you lose a battle, you get all your tokens back. You don't lose anything. You get your armies and everything, and the other player just gains something. So it's more trying to stop the other players from getting their engines going than attacking each other, which is really neat. So it's a really fun game. I highly suggest it. I thought it was great. The big question would be, okay, if I have 3 players, is this the game I'm going to bring to the table? I don't know. There's a lot of great Euros that play fine with 3 players, and I may play that instead. But this is definitely a unique experience. It's going to require a couple playthroughs to kind of get under your belt. Playing the game is actually pretty easy. The rules and whatnot can seem a little confusing. It's got a lot of those little fiddly rules, and this does that, and that does this, and why am I trying to do that? But the fun in the game really comes in making the choices. And that's what I love. I love that idea of, okay, it's about making this choice. If I go here, what's that going to mean for the other players? Or maybe I should go here instead. It can be AP-inducing, so that first game is going to run you over 3 hours, maybe 4 hours, as people read the cards and whatnot. But it's that classic version of the more you play it, the more it's going to come down in time. So getting that first game under your belt is going to be, a little bit of a challenge. But after that, the time comes down a whole bunch, and probably is in the 2.5 hour range to play a game at that point. But it's really exciting. It's good to make those decisions. The decisions are important. Scoring points can be a little confusing, but as you go through, it makes sense. And I really like that about the game, that the game makes sense as you're playing it. You're just now battling with yourself over what should I do with the other players. It's fun to then join forces every now and then and say, ooh, what should we do together? Or be working against another player, but then the next turn you're working with that player, and that element is really neat. So 2 thumbs up for Three Kingdoms Redux. You should definitely check it out. As that comes out from Capstone Games in 2017. I highly recommend it. This is the Brandt, and thanks for watching.